we're always connected. That love never dies. And that connection is always there. And once people can sort of grasp that, and even just being open and available to the idea that there's more is where I love to just sort of plant that seed with people.
After suffering a miscarriage, Shauna DeMellon dealt with her own grief and heartache. But as a spiritual medium, Shauna says she has connected with the son she lost, and that has given her hope. Shauna believes we can all connect with our children in heaven if we are open to it. She believes communication with the children we lost can lead to healing and a renewed purpose in life. She says her psychic skills were evident at a very young age and now uses them to help others find peace through her website, blog, and podcast, The Oracle of Light. Well, thank you so much, Shauna, for joining me on the podcast. You reached out to me, and it was interesting. It was a kind of a God or universe thing, because I was just thinking about some of these issues, communicating, first of all, or where is my daughter? How is that even possible? I was just personally thinking about that. And I was also looking for a guest to come on my podcast. And there you were. You showed up in my inbox and told me a little bit about what you did. And I looked at your website and listened to your podcast. And I just found a lot of it really fascinating, including your own personal story. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Angela. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here today.
Can you tell me a little bit about your son, Jack? How old was Jack when you lost him? What happened?
Absolutely. We had decided to have another baby. I have a daughter who is 16, and we had decided to have another child. And we were unsuccessful in getting things going. And so we had started the in vitro process. So we were going through in vitro, and for mothers and families who understand what that process is like, it's hopeful and it's scary and it's uncertain, and there's so many different aspects involved. And to make a long story short, things didn't go according to plan. And so Jack would have been 8 this year. And he, as a medium, so many people said, oh, well, it's not a big deal. You can try again. You can adopt. You can do all sorts of different things with that. And it was debilitating. And so working through the grieving process was absolutely life-changing for me. And as I said, as being a medium, people were like, well, what's the big deal? You can just connect with him, and it was working through my grief that helped me to understand what makes it a little bit more challenging to make that connection, and working through that and figuring out how to navigate that and how to clear the energies and open myself up to making that connection so I could connect with him and experience him.
I want to get into all of that in just a moment. But so my understanding is that you miscarried then. Is that correct? Your son?
Very, very early on in the process. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't want to talk about miscarriage, right? Or the loss that goes along with that. And even stillbirth, which I think people even can understand maybe a little bit more, the loss associated when you actually have taken a pregnancy full term. But can you talk a little bit about why really recognizing the loss of miscarriage is important?
Miscarriage, I find there are people that for them, a child isn't real unless they're physically, somehow they're not physically right here where you can see them and touch them and hold them. And that if it's a miscarriage, it's almost like there's this preconceived notion that, well, it's not a big deal. It happened. It's not a big deal. You can try again. And so there are all these different nuances and all of these different points of view around it, that it really wasn't a big deal. And so a lot of the women that I work with, we validate that was a loss. And for myself, being a medium, I experienced Jack, months before we'd even decided to have another child. And my daughter at the time, same thing. She would be like, when is my brother coming in? And why isn't he in your tummy yet? And when are we going to have him? And so the months leading up to even making the decision to start the in vitro process, Jack was in my dreams. He was around. And I mean, as a medium, I'm able to experience those energies. And he was very much real and very much a part of our life, even before we had met with the doctors and started that process.
That's really interesting. When I was pregnant, and I know I was pregnant, obviously, with Emily, I didn't know if I was having a boy or a girl. And in my dreams, while I was pregnant, a little girl at about age 3 or 4 came to me with Emily's face. Her hair was a little different, but it was Emily's face. And then I knew I was having a girl. So I do believe, and I really believe in the mother's intuition. I really believe in that. So
yes. Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. And it was fascinating. Yes, he was always in my dreams, and his energy was here in the house. And it was lovely. And like I said, my daughter would come in and say, I'm going to show Jack this, and I want to teach him that. And so he existed energetically and in our hearts, so much so that it was just, he was already a part of our lives. And so I love to give that validation to women that have had miscarriages. It's just, that is it's a loss. It really isn't, from an energetic perspective and on a spiritual, as part of our spiritual journey, we're always connected. That love never dies. And that connection is always there. And once people can sort of grasp that, and even just being open and available to the idea that there's more is where I love to just sort of plant that seed with people.
Now let's talk about that. You call yourself a medium,
Yes.
And there's a lot of ideas around that word.
Oh, yes.
So tell me what you mean by that.
As in being a medium?
Yes,
as in
being
connecting.
a medium. Mm-hmm.
So when I was a little girl, I saw spirit everywhere. And when I say spirit, I refer to them as the see-through people. And so I didn't see full body apparitions, but I could see the faint outlines of people that were around, other family members and around, my friends. And
how old were you when this happened to you?
The earliest I recall is like 4 or 5. So I've always been aware of something else. I've always been aware of, I would see just different angelic beings and different lights, and I would sense different energies. And I saw, we had different pets over the years, and then I would see them, and they were in sort of this faint view as well. And it was fascinating. And so I've, from a very young age, saw and experienced these energies. And I started to know things that other people didn't know. Like I would say, oh, well, our neighbor he's not doing well. He's going to go to the hospital and he's not going to come home. And then when that happened a few weeks later, it was, oh, why would you say that? It was just,
you freaked people out. You freaked people out.
It freaked people out. It did. It freaked people out.
So Shauna, I have a question. So I'm a journalist and by nature a skeptic. And it's not that I'm not saying that these things aren't possible. I just can't see that, scientifically confirm that this kind of thing can happen. So what do you say to skeptics out there?
What I say to skeptics is I usually invite them to connect into their heart. And just as I'm saying that, your energy is already connecting into your heart. And I invite them to think of a loved one who has crossed, who has died. And I invite them to just connect in and sit in that energy in their heart. And 99.9% of the time, they will experience something. And that's just where I leave it. And whether or not they believe it or not is completely up to them. It's not up to me to convince people. It's opening them up to the possibility that there is more to life than what we know here in the physical. And part of the spiritual journey, from my perspective, is our spiritual beliefs and our connection, and what that looks like for each individual is just that. It's very unique. It's our individual journey. It's whatever we would like that to look like. And oftentimes, and not all the time, oftentimes when I have somebody who really comes at me with, this is not real, you can't prove it, you need to stop talking about this, they have had a loss that they haven't processed. They've had a loss that they've experienced that was perhaps traumatic, and they haven't been able to fully grieve and understand that and find meaning in their life again. And so sometimes there's an anger that comes with it that I've had people, not often, but over the years, they've sort of directed that at me. And it's just been oh my goodness. And then after the fact, I've had a few people come back to me later and say, hey, listen, I'm sorry that I was really challenging you. And, I lost someone. And I love to just give people the possibility. There was a spiritual teacher I worked with years ago, and she said, it's like offering a cookie. Would you like a cookie? Yes. Great. Have one. Would you like one? Absolutely not. Okay. Would you like to have one? And so I love to present the information, and I love to present the possibilities, and then people will do whatever they want with it. It's presenting hope and meaning. And if I can help facilitate someone's heartache and their healing, I will absolutely do whatever I can.
Right. And I think helping with that heartache and healing, there's no harm in that, right? So I have a number of, for new friends now, groups of women who I know who have lost children, especially in a similar way I have. I was part of a national group, and we all got together and we all lost children to overdose. And many, many of those women seek out mediums or psychics. They really want to connect with their child. They want to know that their child is okay. I think we all want to know our child is okay, because death seems so final. And it's the hardest thing any parent ever has to go through. So we're just searching for answers. And many of these women seek people out like you.
They do. Absolutely. And from my loss, when I lost Jack, when it was just, when they said, okay, well, no, it didn't work, this isn't working. And it was like, I instantly knew. It was like, oh my gosh, he's gone. And the grief, as you are aware, I'm sure, the different stages of grief, I was just initially in shock. And I stayed in that state for years. I was just in shock. And it impacted my marriage at the time. It impacted the relationships I had. It impacted everything in my life. And it was a medium that I had reached out to. And she said to me, well, have you talked to Jack? And I said, no, Jack died. He's gone. And she said, no, he's right here. He's in the room. And it was in that moment I turned and I looked, and I could actually see him. And it was like a piece of my heart came back. And again, yes, I am a medium, and I've spiritually been open to the other side and connecting for many, many years, my entire life, really. And it was in that moment, being able to see him and being able to work through the grief and sitting in that space of the denial and just the shock of it. And just, I was so depressed and so hurt and so upset and angry at everyone. I was angry at myself, angry at my spouse, angry at the doctors, angry at God. How could he let this happen? And then in that moment, to be able to see and experience my son and feel him energetically and know that he was safe, and know that he was still very much a part of my world in a different way, not in the way that I'd hoped and dreamt of, but that I could still connect with him and I could still communicate with him. And I mean, that was just the most special gift that I've ever received. It was just, like I said, it was like from that day forward, it was like a part of my heart was back. It was just, okay, I could see, there was hope in my life again. It was, okay, this is exciting. And, my son, Jack, he always leaves heart rocks. And so then I started to find heart rocks everywhere. And it was like, oh my gosh, how many, when we move, we're getting ready to move. And I'm sure I'm going to need a big dump truck to carry them all, because there's so many heart rocks in the house. And it was just, even, I wasn't ever a skeptic, but I didn't understand that my grief could prevent me from making that connection with him. And that as I worked through that, then it was able to sort of lift, and then I was open, and it helped my heart to open and to heal and to experience him in that way.
So how does grief block the connection?
So David L. Hawkins developed the consciousness scale, is what we refer to it as. And so the different emotions that we experience are rated on this scale. So for example, shame is at the lowest. It's at about 20. Grief is at 70. And as we move up the scale, as we get closer to 500, the level 500 is actually love. And from the level of 500, that's when our heart is open, and that's when we can make the connection. So when we're sitting in a grief vibration or energy, if you will, we're not able to raise our vibration up into those different levels where from that space, we can connect with the different energies. We can, we can connect with whatever you call that. It can be universal energies. It can be spiritual. It can be God. It can be Jesus. It can be so many different things. And of course, our loved ones. And so that's a little bit of background to help understand what those different emotions are. So for example, I was in such intense grief for years. And so my vibration was very low. And when we're at a low vibration, our energy field isn't magnetic. We're not able to draw into our reality what it is that we'd really like to have in our world. And so as I was able to move through the grief, I was able to raise that vibration up a little bit at a time and a little bit at a time. And then finally, when I was able to get up to that 500 range, that was when I was able to experience Jack again.
It strikes me that even people who may not believe in mediumship, or people who may not believe in psychic powers, or however you want to phrase it, understand energy. I think we can all understand energy, right? You walk into a room and you can feel the energy, or a business place, or, whatever, wherever you feel your own energy shifting,
Yes.
throughout the day. I think there's no doubt that we are all operating on an energetic level in one way or the other.
Absolutely. And if you can imagine how quickly the electrical current will travel from walking into a room and turning the switch on from when that light illuminates, that's how fast spirit energy moves. So if we are sitting energetically in a grief vibration, we're not moving very quickly energetically. Grief, when I was grieving, I felt intense physical pain, and I was achy, and I was tired, and I didn't want to eat, and I didn't really want to go to the gym, and I'm just like, everything was lackluster, and I just was hopeless. And I just had I felt like my heart was broken. And
I think we all understand those feelings that you're describing. Every parent who's lost a child can say, bingo, that's exactly how you feel.
Yes. And sitting, and all of that was weighing down my vibration and my energy. And so again, once we started to look at that and look at shifting it, and then my energy was starting to rise up a little bit. And then it's like our energy is a little bit closer to how quickly spirit energy is. And then eventually it'll start to align where we can experience that. We can, we wake up and we remember dreams that our loved ones are in. We can see signs. We can start to feel a different energy in the room with us. It's very similar to when you walk into a room after someone's been arguing. You pick that up. You walk in, you're like, whoa, what the heck was that? Same sort of energy. Spirit energy is subtle. And so once we start to experience a child that has crossed over, we experience a loved one, we start to feel what that energy feels like, then we start to feel it more and more. And then it just becomes more heightened. And they, on the other side, are even more excited, I think, at times to make that connection with us, to let us know we're here, we're still a part of your life. And it's so amazing, because when you start to experience that energy. So for example, the day that I saw Jack come into the room, it was like, oh my gosh, he's there. You're okay. Oh my goodness. And so I see children growing up in heaven. So I see them as, if they were younger, I see them growing up. And then sometimes they will present and stay at the age that they were when they did cross over. And so it varies from child to child, from soul to soul. And then from that moment forward, I felt Jack instantly in the house. It was like I recognized that energy. I recognized that feeling. And so then I would be doing dishes and it would be, oh, I feel him. Where is he? What's happening? Or I would be, out for a hike, and it would just be like, oh, I just found a heart rock. Oh my gosh, he's here. He's here. And so it really helped to facilitate the healing and move through the grief. And not that I ever say to someone, you'll eventually get over it, because we never forget. We never fully get over it. We learn to integrate it into our world, and we learn to navigate all of those different feelings and the emotions and the grief, and continue to build our life and live the best life that we can.
That's the question I was going to ask you. Many people get stuck in their grief, that heavy, heavy burden of sadness. And I think for me personally, it comes and goes, right? Like I'll have waves of it at different times, and then maybe I'll be okay. I'll be functioning okay and doing everything okay. And then it comes back. But I do know other moms and dads in the position of having lost a child who are just sort of stuck in that. It's just such a hard place to be stuck in, and they don't know how to for lack of better words, rise above that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's so difficult. And when you lose a child, you've not only experienced that loss, you're also grieving the future that you saw with that child.
Definitely.
You're grieving the possibilities. You're grieving all the life events. You're grieving, you're grieving so many different aspects at once, and it becomes very, very overwhelming. And what I know for sure is that our loved ones on the other side, they are at peace, and they want nothing but the best for us. They are very much a part of our lives. They are still very much connected with us. If that is something that you can be open and available to, of course, depending on everyone's belief structure and how that works for everyone. I know for myself, when I was stuck in that energy, it was just, I was so stuck. And I just, started to really look at, okay, what am I telling myself? What is sitting there that's keeping this energy stuck? What is it that's keeping it stuck? And it, there were different thoughts as, well, maybe we could have done something different. And then, there was maybe some guilt wrapped up in it. And, there was, as I mentioned earlier, there was blame. I was angry at everyone. How did this happen? And in working through the different stages of grief, I was finally able to accept. I didn't like it, but I was finally able to accept that he wasn't here in his physical body. And
so you think acceptance is key. Now, I don't know if I think there are different stages of grief, but they don't all happen in a certain order. They don't, I think a lot of people think, okay, I'm going to experience these stages of grief and then I'm going to be fine.
Yep.
And I don't think that is ever necessarily going to happen. But I think that acceptance, and I just spoke just yesterday to a woman who had lost her son at age 14. He'd been hit by a car. He was on a bicycle 16 years ago. And she told me it never goes away. It is still painful. It is still hard. And she was living her life. She had a husband and other children. It wasn't like she had stopped living. But I do think, it's the acceptance part of it, I think, is so important.
It is the acceptance part of it. And it's absolutely, I loved what you were saying. My grief, I was in shock and disbelief for so many years. And then it went into the depression. And then I was angry. And it sort of ping ponged back and forth. And what I like to always explain to people is that when you have a loss, that loss will connect to other losses that you've had. And it can start to feel like a tsunami. And it's just overwhelming. And it's just, your heart is feeling all the different losses that you've had. And there isn't a guidebook to loss, especially with a child. Like, there are really no words to describe that to someone. Everyone has lost a loved one. Everyone has experienced that sort of a loss. And not to minimize it or make it greater or less than, but it's, you are grieving the future. You're grieving the dreams and the hopes, and you're grieving where you saw this child in your life and how, the milestones and everything that child was going to experience. And you're grieving so much around it. And to this day, I still have pockets of grief. I'll see a little boy running down the street who kind of looks like Jack, and he's got freckles on his nose. And every now and again, my heart just starts pounding and my breath catches, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's still there. And so there are still pockets of grief. There are still aspects of it. And I think for myself, I got to the point where I remembered that my life was amazing before we lost him. I remembered before that my life was amazing and it was beautiful. And I remember thinking every day, what can I do today that would bring more joy into my life? What can I do today? And not that it was easy, and not that it was, minimizing the loss by any means, but I thought, how can I show up to be the best version of myself with this loss? How can it's a part of me. It's never going to go away. It's always going to be there. But how can I not let it be all consuming? For me, it became all consuming. And I think I just reached a point where I thought, okay, there has to be more to life with this. There has to be a better way that I can do this, still honoring Jack, and I will never forget him. And if he at some point, I used to think, well, maybe at some point he'll come in a different way, or I wonder what that would look like. And I've talked to other mediums who have said, well, maybe he'll come in as a grandbaby at some point. And I thought, oh, well, okay, there's maybe there's some other possibilities here. And so I started to really look at it from a perspective of, I want to honor my loss, but I don't want the loss to define me. I don't want that loss to be the guiding force in my life. And so that was that day when I saw him, I thought, oh my gosh, okay. So knowing that he was safe, knowing that I felt a little bit of ease in my heart, and that became stronger and stronger over time. And then it wasn't as all consuming. And then it was like I had little snippets during the day where I thought, oh, okay, well, maybe I can finish that project now. And okay. And so then slowly over time, it became less and less. So I didn't start my day crying. I didn't go to bed crying every day. And there's still some days where I feel like that, but I'm able to move through it and still acknowledge, wow, that still hurts. It's still, I think it's just, I
do like the idea that you don't want to let the loss define you. I think it's really important, because that can happen to people. Yes. And even I'm running a charity in my daughter's name, so the loss could define me. Yes. But I really believe it's bigger than that. You know what I mean? The charity is bigger than, I'm honoring her, but we're doing a lot, and it's hard to can maybe get to that point, and it does take time. And so when you talk about communicating with the child that you lost in some sort of spiritual form, you feel that people have to see a medium to be able to do that, or can anybody do that?
Oh, I love this question. I always tell people, you do not have to be a medium, and you do not have to go and see a medium. Sometimes we're a little too close to it. So we're not able to pull back and get the bird's eye view, and we're not able to sit in a neutral energy so that we can just experience everything. And that's when we reach out. That's when we can reach out to a medium, or we reach out to a psychic or an intuitive or a healer. We reach out to someone else to help us navigate, and maybe help us to, find some closure, or find the healing, or, give us a little bit more clarity. And it's really quite fascinating, because I always tell people, I have so many people that reach out to me, and I had a dream about my daughter. Was that really her? That was really her. Wow. I keep seeing, I had a client last week, and she said, I keep seeing dragonflies. They're dragonflies. And after, at the end of every reading, I always like to let people know, okay, these are the signs from your loved ones. Look for these signs. These are specifically from them. And she said, I didn't know what the dragonflies were. And then you'd mentioned that they were from my grandfather. And she said, now that I see them, they're everywhere. They're, do you think it's really from him? And so it's interesting, because when we are just available and open to the possibility, that's just a little bit of an opening. And that's all that spirit needs to come in and start to weave that magic into our world. And so again, I always tell people, no, we all have spiritual gifts. Some people refer to them as psychic gifts or spiritual gifts. We all have these different gifts, and it depends on the individual as to whether or not they'd like to look at them. If they'd like to, I've unwrapped mine and mastered them and polished them, and I teach people and I share people. That's just me. That's not for everybody. But for some people, they sort of want to dip their toe into it. And again, you don't have to be a medium to connect with your child on the other side. If you connect into your heart space and just have that beautiful energy into your heart and just invite them into your world, they will find a way to make sure that you know that they're with you. That's as easy as I can explain it to people. And then people that love to take it a step further, then absolutely book in for a session, or take a class, or reach out, find a mentor. If you really, read books. I mean, now we've got TV shows about mediumship. Heck, we've got so many different avenues and so many different possibilities for people. And I always tell people, follow what's true for you. Follow what resonates in your heart. Don't take what I'm saying as truth. It's the gospel. Shauna said it. You have to do it. No, I'm not your guru. I'm just giving you the information. And then you need to choose based on what's true for you, what's true in your heart.
I would say that almost every parent I've talked to, including, myself, talks about signs that we feel like that it's just too hard to just explain it away. Signs that we've received from our child. I did talk to my grief counselor about this early on, in that first year. And I said, well, I think I got this, there's, this song that I keep hearing that I associate with my daughter. And she said, well, what does it hurt to believe in that? You're not hurting anything by believing that's a sign. I know you're a skeptic, Angela. I know you're a journalist, but you're not hurt. You're not hurting anybody. You're not hurting yourself. In fact, you can find comfort in that. So find comfort in it. I mean, I really love that response.
That is so beautiful. And that's exactly what it is. It's finding comfort. There was a day, it was a couple of months ago, we'd had a loss in the family, and there were so many different emotions flying around. And I thought I need to just, go out for a hike. And I'm on the drive out to the hike. It's about an hour outside the city. I said, Jack, I'd really love a heart rock today. And then on my hike, I found 15.
You asked for it.
I asked for it. Yes, Jack, give me a sign. I always tell people, ask your child, give me a sign. Just give me a sign. And then be open and available to whatever it's going to look like. Don't have any preconceived notions of, I want it to be a feather and I want to see this and I want to see this. Just be open and just almost a playful energy and sort of a fun energy. Okay, I wonder, maybe I'll see something today. And I always tell Spirit, show it to me a few times to make sure that I get it. And so this particular day, like I said, I found 15 rocks, heart rocks, and I kept taking pictures, and it was like a scavenger hunt, and it was crazy. Other times I will ask for a feather. I'd really love to find a feather today. And then sure enough, there will be a feather that sort of comes out of the sky out of nowhere, or there's like, the cat's walking around with the feather on his head, or, the feathers will show up. And I always tell people, whenever you receive a sign, just gratitude tells the spirit world, oh, she got it. Okay. And then more, please. I always say, okay, thank you. More, please. it becomes hopeful and fun. And again, it doesn't erase anything. It doesn't take away any pain. It just sort of lessens it for us. And again, like you were saying, it's just a little bit of comfort. It's just, okay, I can do this. Everything, I always say, Marie Forleo, she always says, everything is figure outable. And so I always tell people, everything is figure outable. And through my grief, I kept thinking, through the loss, I kept thinking, there's got to be a way through this. There's got to be a way that I can heal and I can find joy and meaning in my life again. There has to be a way. And so that's sort of what I kept thinking in my mind. And I was, teach people that, whatever we're thinking, those predominant thoughts and those emotions are creating our reality. And so what is it that we're thinking? What is it that we're feeling?
I also think that it's very wise, no matter what you're going through, whether it be the loss of a child or something else, we all go through a lot of suffering in this life in various forms. We can look to other people who have experienced the same thing, because somebody out there has experienced the exact same thing. And how are they doing it well? How are they getting through this well? How are they coping well? I think it's really important to look for other people.
It is really important. And one of the, I was listening to a podcast with Tony Robbins, and he said, suffering is a choice. Suffering is a choice. He said,
it is your thought process. It is about the situation, for sure.
It is, absolutely. And that is not in any way, means, shape, or form, making it less than. I mean, I've heard so many traumatic, terrible losses over the years. Absolutely. And it's not to minimize any of those losses whatsoever. But he had said, suffering is a choice. Joy and happiness are also a choice, and possibilities are a choice. And we can start to navigate that into, okay, today I'm going to choose to be happy. And we don't have to know what that looks like. It's making that choice for something different, for something more, for something greater. I choose to be happy today. I choose to see the positivity. And I will invite I'll invite, my spiritual team, if you will. I'll invite my guides and my spiritual team into my world, and I'll say, okay, show me something beautiful today. Show me something beautiful. Show me something magical today. Show me, remind me of how much I love life, and give me a sign. Give me some beautiful signs today. And so I'm inviting those energies into my world, and they're literally waiting in the wings to come in for all of us. And once we start to have those conversations, and it's not like we need to walk around having these, conversations out loud. We can be thinking these thoughts in our head. I'd really like to see a sign today. And I wonder if I'll see a sign today. And when it does happen, I always tell people, Spirit always answers. When we ask a question, there's always an answer. It may not be immediate. It may take a little bit of time for them to navigate and line things up for us, but there's always an answer. We are, the synchronicities will start to play out in our life. Spirit will move the right person in at the right time. You will overhear a conversation that has that snippet of information that touches your heart. You will be guided to turn the radio on, and there's that song playing that just brings it all together for you. You will start to have dreams. You will start to have inspiration. The other thing I like to explain to people is that when our vibration is up higher, as I mentioned earlier, up around 500, that's when we are connected into our spirit, our true authentic self. And from that space, that's where those creative juices start flowing. That's where we get the inspiration to write a book, start a blog, have an organization, have a foundation, reach out to this person, put this event together, bake cookies, whatever it is. We start to have those creative juices get flowing and all of those different ideas. And that also facilitates the healing.
I agree that creativity comes through us 100%. It comes through us through a higher power, a source. Yes. And I think we have to get still to tap into that, right? Yes. Our life and our world is so busy. Grief is so oppressive. And then on top of that, we're expected to carry on, and we just don't take the time, to get into nature, meditate, work out, whatever it might be, to take care of yourself and to just escape the constant thinking, the thoughts that are constantly bombarding you. I think we all would be better served, whether we've experienced great loss or not, by reconnecting with our true self, our higher self, which I believe is part of God, part of the universe.
Absolutely. It really is. And I love the work of Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah, me too.
Yes, right.
We're both fans. Fans. Yeah.
Huge fans. Uh-huh. And it was such a game changer for me because he said, life is happening here in the now. We cannot create our future if we are in the past. We cannot create our future if we're in the future wondering and so there's also the ego aspect of it. Our ego loves to pull us out of the now into, worrying about what happened and ruminating over what happened. And that's also where people get stuck, is a lot of those different, ideas and everything that comes up around our ego will sort of pull us out, that mindset. And then if we go into the future, we're worried about that. And what's that going to look like? Again, that's that ego part of us that's pulling us out of the now. And when we're able to really connect into that now, that essence, that the truth of what is, and really connect into, I explain it as, we're connecting into our authentic self, our authentic power, our spirit. That connects us to everything. And that connects us to God, to the universal energies, and whatever that looks like for you. And it's from that space, then we can start to see possibilities. We can start to see, okay, yes, I'm a mom that's lost a child. Yes, that is part of my story. That's part of my heart now. It just is. I'm also a woman who feels empowered, who has a business, who loves to touch people's lives. Mm-hmm. I'm also a parent. Yes, I'm also a partner. And so it helps you to start to see. I always tell people we're like a mosaic, a multicolored mosaic. We really are. And we're multifaceted diamonds. And we are always changing and evolving and growing. And again, that loss, I always tell people it's almost like a little tender spot that's always going to be there. And sometimes it gets touched, and sometimes we forget about it, and then it comes back, and it's always there, but it doesn't have to define us. That we get to design our life alongside what's happened to us in the past. And it really gives hope and meaning and purpose, and really helps us to step into, more of, how can I show up to be the best version of myself? That was the main question that after that first day that I saw Jack again, and I experienced him and I felt his energy. And then I started seeing heart rocks. Every day I would get up and I would, go through my daily routine, my ritual. I connect in, I journal, I meditate, I work out. And I would always ask, what would it look like for me to show up as the best version of me today? There were months where I would get up, I didn't want to get dressed. I'd wear pajamas half the day. I didn't want to eat. And I thought, no, what does the best version of Shauna, what would she show up as? And so it was, I'm going to get up and I'm going to do my hair and I'm going to get dressed and I'm going to maybe put on a little bit of makeup and I'm going to actually go to have coffee with my friends. I mean, my friends were incredible during the whole process. Everyone would call in and they would ask and they would say, come out to this and come out to that. And I kept saying, no, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. And I thought, okay, the best version of me would actually go. The best version of me would show up in a different way. And what would that look like? And I became curious about what I would look like, because I wasn't the same person anymore, because I had this loss.
No, we changed, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And so then I became curious about, okay, so how do I want to show up in my life now? Yes, I have this loss. It's a part of me, but how can I be the best version of me? How can I design my life? What does that look like?
So what do you think happens after we die?
From my perspective, we leave our physical body and we are greeted on the other side by our loved ones who are waiting, literally waiting. And if anyone has seen the movie Ghost with Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore, that's usually homework that I give people that depicts the spirit world beautifully. I actually do see a beautiful light that opens up and I see the souls crossing over. From what I've seen after giving thousands of readings over the years, is there are loved ones that are waiting to greet that soul. There are spirit guides and different energies that work with us, and they're all waiting in the wings for us. From what has been described to me, when we leave the physical body, we leave behind any pain, any sorrow. It is pure bliss and joy and unconditional love. And from that space, in that, there is a life review where we're able to look at, okay, so I chose to incarnate into this life. Did I accomplish what I set out to? Did my soul grow? Did I learn different things? What did that look like for me? And then from my perspective and what I've experienced with spirit over the years, then we can choose to stay and oversee our family from the other side. Some will become spirit guides. We can continue our spiritual growth on the other side. We can reincarnate. Some souls want to come back in and they want to be with their soul family and reincarnate and be a part of that family. I swear, there was one of my girlfriends, she had lost her grandmother and she had a baby a few years ago. And she said, I swear it's my grandmother's energy in my daughter's energy. She said, it's the weirdest thing. And so it just sort of opens up a whole new realm of possibilities, if you will. And so from my perspective, love never dies. That connection is always there. And it's dependent upon how open and available we are to what that looks like. And again, that's unique to everyone.
Right. Everyone's grief journey is a very personal journey, the journey of loss, for sure. And I think that whichever way you can find comfort, it's so important to find that comfort.
It is. And, there were some days where Netflix, PJs, and chocolate were comfort. There were other days when it was the ugly cry. I didn't wear mascara for years. I thought, well, I can't wear mascara because I'll be crying at some point today and I'll look like a raccoon and it'll be a horrible mess. And, for me, we live just down the street. There's this huge park, this huge playground. And so for the longest time, I didn't want to drive down. I didn't want to drive by that playground. I didn't want to see children. I didn't want to see pregnant moms. I didn't want to see moms with newborns. And so finding comfort was just, I didn't want to be around that. I didn't want to see it. And then over time, it was, I can experience their happiness and joy. I can see that as a blessing, and that's amazing and it's beautiful. And so absolutely finding that comfort. Some days it was just sitting and sharing space. One of the most powerful things was, I heard Brene Brown say, she said, people have to earn the right to hear your story. And that really sat with me, because there were people through my loss that I had shared and I had opened up to, who thought, big deal, whatever, it doesn't matter, just get over it. And working through that, I realized it almost set me back to share my story with someone who couldn't hold that space for it, who didn't have the capacity to just sit and just honor the loss. And so I've learned over time to be very selective with who I share that with, and understand that, yes, I've had grief counselors and I've worked with different healers and mediums, and, I've had a team of people helping me put things back together. But yeah, just really, really finding that comfort, and really, finding people that I can share my loss with, who can hold that space and hold my heart, and just allow it to be whatever it needs to be. And so, I get, people are always sending me pictures and sending me messages. Look, I found heart rocks, and look, I found feathers today. And look, I found dimes, and oh my goodness, there was a rainbow today. And look, I heard this and I heard that. And so that's the movement I want to create, is around signs, that we can all receive those signs. And I'd love it when people share that with me. What are the signs? Tell me. I want to know what those signs are that you're receiving from your babies on the other side, from your grandparents, from whomever you've lost on the other side. What are those signs? Because those are little pieces of love that we can tuck into our heart.
I love that. I love what you just said. That's beautiful. Little pieces of love we can tuck into our heart. Yeah. And I'm going to let people know how to contact you through your website, and how to listen to your podcast. That'll be in the show notes and on our website for this podcast. I just want to thank you so much for joining me today. Is there anything you want to leave people with, Shauna?
Just first of all, thank you so much for having me. This is such a blessing, and I've loved our time together today. Just that love never dies, that connection is always there, and that our loved ones on the other side are just so eager and so excited to make that connection. And I invite everyone to ask their loved ones for a sign, and just be open and available to whatever it is.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me for this latest edition of Grieving Out Loud. If you're enjoying the podcast, please consider giving a positive review. Wishing you faith, hope, and courage.